Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of November the 12th, 2015, meeting of the Roswell Historic Preservation Commission to order. We're going to change the agenda around just a bit. The first item is Green Street. We're going to hear that first, and then we're going to move to the last item on the agenda. That applicant has asked to be heard out of order, and I've told him that we will do that. And then we'll move through the agenda in the order that it appears. So, Julie?
First on the agenda is HPC 2015-03932, 1065 Green Street. The applicant originally came before the Historic Preservation Commission in 2011. He was approved and has his certificate of appropriateness. He has renewed it annually since then, and he is requesting another renewal of this approval. Here's the subject property. Here's a recent photo of the property. Here is the approved site plan, the approved architectural drawings, and staff recommends approval of the extension request and that all previous conditions apply. The applicant is present if you have any questions.
Any questions to the staff? Applicant wishes to say anything? Your name and address, please, sir.
Larry Hutto, 1065 Green Street, Roswell, Georgia, 30075. I appreciate the extension. All of you, I'm not wasting your time. All of you know of my completed projects. Just don't know that I did them because I did them 40 years ago. When Holcomb Bridge was a 2-lane road, I purchased the property, duplex property and triplex property at Opal Drive and Thomas Drive. 2 or 3 years later, I sold that. When Jim Blair and Roger Blair built their building on Old Roswell Road and put the Roswell Athletic Club in there, I put a lap pool in there. I built a lap pool in there. And then 500 yards over my shoulder on Norcross Street, I found the land, but at that time, my acting and commercial career took off, so I brought in 2 friends of mine, David Childers and Ronnie Ross, and we developed and built the Roswell Landing. I think that's the first condos in Roswell, I'm not sure. At the lake on Magnolia, the house at the lake on Magnolia, I built that big pool there. It was featured in Dixie Living. And which brings me to Green Street. I bought it from people who were born and raised in the house. The street was named after them. And if everything works out right, I still plan on moving forward with all your approvals.
Commissioners, you got any questions to the petitioner? Please.
Sorry, wrong button. Are you asking for this renewal because you're going to build on it, or are you marketing it with this plan?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
Are
on.
you going to build on it, or are you just trying to sell the property with this approved
At this
plan?
stage, I want to build on it. I want to do what I originally started to do. I think there's still, it's unanimously approved of what I was going to do there with the concept, the buildings, and the jazz club, whatever. Yeah, I'd still like to go forth with that. But if somebody else wants to do it and I can't do it when I do it, then I would sell the property.
Well, my only reasoning for asking that question is I wondered if you were actively marketing it now. Are you trying to sell it?
It is up for sale.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm just kind of thinking
Yeah.
out loud when I was looking at this.
If somebody comes by and makes me an offer I can't refuse, then I'll sell it.
Right.
If not, I'll do it when I can. I'm just coming off of the recession with doing what I do for a living, making architectural products for the high-end homes, been a slow comeback.
Julie, if someone wanted to purchase that property but didn't want to build this building or do this work that we had approved, they can just start over and ask for something
They
else,
would have to start
correct?
all over.
Yes, that is correct. They could present a new application to the HPC.
Okay.
To ensure that, though, as a part of the motion to approve, you can make that a contingency stipulation.
That if someone purchased it and didn't want to build it, they would have to bring it back?
Yes.
Have any changes?
Yeah, yeah, right, okay.
So, I'm not quite sure I heard everything you're saying. If somebody should buy it, if I should sell it, they can buy the complete package as long as they do it per what y'all have approved for.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And I know there was some discussion about the walkways there, but I think y'all got something in the works, so that's coming anyway. So, that's no big deal to me.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
In looking at the plans, I'm concerned about the location of the dumpster. I know you have it in there, you'll landscape it, but actually the location of the dumpster faces, the opening of the dumpster faces right onto Green Street, and apparently it would serve both buildings, and I just think it'd be very unsightly to see trash being taken out, not only from the two buildings, but the opening of the dumpster right onto Green Street. I don't know what the scale is here, but it's not set back that far, and you can't landscape it, of course, because that's where it's going to be picked up. But I have a real concern about that. My other concern is, I don't know, it seems like this was approved 4 years ago, that how long we keep approving it year after year. I just don't know if there should be some time we say, if you haven't been able to develop it or sell it, that it's probably time to start over when you get ready to develop it or you sell it. That's my comments.
It's been approved like that for 4 years, so I understand what you're saying, you know. And landscaping can be done, or the adjustment of moving the dumpster could be done, could be done as well. Down further than the property. If you look at the people beside me that are getting ready to put the sushi restaurant in, that's where their dumpster is going to be, supposedly, and their property. So, and then they got the, across the street, the Plum Street Cafe, their dumpster faces right there onto Green Street and their side street that they pull in, so. But that can be worked around. I can adjust it, whatever works for you.
Okay, that's all of my comments, Tony.
Judy?
Julie, just to clarify, is there any restriction in the code for how many times we can approve an extension?
From my understanding, there was none, but it's up to you guys.
I just want to clarify that.
There is no restriction at this time in the UDC.
Okay, thank you.
If this project were reviewed under the new UDC, would there be any, or I guess my question is, has it been reviewed for compliance under the?
Can you hear me? Okay. No, it has not been reviewed under the UDC because Mr. Hutto applied under the old zoning code. That is the one which has applied continuously.
That's the letter I got, too, from, that will be anything, it would encompass whatever I grandfathered in or whatever's grandfathered in.
Other comments, questions? What's your pleasure? Judy?
I move that we approve HPC 2015-03932, 1065 Green Street, extension request for building renovation and new construction, with all previous conditions, and should the property be sold and the new owner decides not to use the approved plans, anything, or changes anything in it, any changes to the approved plans would need to come back before this board.
You have a motion, do we have a second? Alex seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion, please so indicate by raising your hand. We have unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll have to move through a few slides here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this next one.
thank you.
The next on the agenda is HPC 2015-04087, 1099 Alpharetta Street, storefront renovations. Here is the property. The parcel contains two buildings. The building that is highlighted in red is the one that is the subject property. At this time, they are not renovating the other building. It looks like it's connected to the building to the south. It is not. They are separate buildings. This is what the building looks like at present. It has a faux colonial entrance facing Fraser Street and one small window facing Alpharetta Street. The applicant is proposing that the entrance is now on Alpharetta Street, which is the address for this property. Here are the adjacent properties. The top one is the additional property on the parcel, which is not being renovated at this time. The bottom one is the auto shop that is immediately adjacent to the south at 1089 Fraser Street. Here's the site plan. The applicant is adding ADA compliant parking. And here are the proposed elevations. The parapet is being extended. As I mentioned, the entrance is moving. Windows are being added. And a canopy which is being added, which is similar to one found at 825 Atlanta Street, which is a similar era building. The applicant has done sightline studies to show that the mechanical equipment which will be located on the roof will not be seen from the ground, and one of the staff conditions recommends that the parapet will meet or exceed the height of said equipment. Here are the material samples. The applicant has made a proposal to change the reclaimed wood with something that is more appropriate to the historic context. Staff has 4 conditions. Shall I read them?
Please.
The reclaimed wood siding laid in a random horizontal pattern as submitted shall not be used. This is due to previous HPC denials in the district. The use of corrugated metal shall be applied in a horizontal, not vertical, pattern and reduced to small accents such as banding around the cornice or windows. Wood or aluminum-clad wood windows without muntins or mullions shall be used, and the HVAC equipment on the roof shall not exceed the height of the parapet. The applicant is here. If you have any questions.
Commissioner, you have any questions to the staff? Applicant wish to say anything at all? Please.
Maybe it's best if we put it in your PowerPoint. Or do we, can we switch it?
the number.
Which one?
Oh, mine is not connected.
Okay, just take your flash drive. Put it in here.
Just tap here. So good evening. My name is Marcus Mello. I'm with Randall Paulson Architects. I'm going to talk about the changes we did in the building and about the materials. So the location of this building is interesting because it's on the transition between the historic district and the part of Roswell that's not historic district. And there are not really buildings that are historic per se. It's just all the adjacent buildings are not what you would call historic Roswell. I have pictures of all the buildings that are close by. Our building is a very low building. We are extending the parapets, but we cannot, for instance, put tall windows there because of the height of the deck. So trying to make this building look more like an old warehouse or something like that would not work. So our approach is, because we are in this transition from historic district to non-historic parts of Roswell, is to use traditional materials with a more contemporary language. So we go well with the part of Roswell that are not historical, but at the same time use materials that you see throughout the historic district. So we are using the corrugated zinc. We are not using the reclaimed wood. We are using now gray stained lap siding and aluminum storefront frames that you see in other several properties that are adjacent, and adding just a bunch of colors at the doors. I have the samples here. I was talking about the materials. So we are using traditional materials that you see in the historic district. We have the pre-weathered zinc that looks like it's there for some time. We have the gray stained lap siding. We have the vertical siding that is just painted in a dark color. That's fiber cement. And then we just add a touch of color on the doors with a terracotta paint. The parapets are tall enough to hide the rooftop units, and once we know which units we are using, the size, we will make sure that we adjust the height so it's not going to be seen. We are adding more openings to the building, so on the side that we have the entrance, which is the side of the address, we create more openings. And we feel that it's important to have the corrugated vertical, not horizontal. Because the building is very horizontal, we need to create some vertical lines to break that.
Any questions for this applicant? Any comments? Any motions? Richard?
I have been wrestling with this. I'm going to preface it by saying what I've said in the work sessions, that I love the architecture. I think it's an excellent job of a very modernist building. And I would love to see it somewhere else. But I continue to wrestle with the concept of diluting the character of our historic district with modern architecture. And,
Well, yeah, I just think that if you look around, there are not many historic buildings in that part of town.
my take on it, and this is an individual opinion, is that we don't have to continue to do bad architecture where there is bad architecture. My fondest hope would be that we would do good historic architecture that would be more compatible with the best parts of our historic district, not just the big houses, but the vernacular, small cottages, any number. We need a range of styles, but I would prefer that we stay in the vocabulary that is set by what we have had of the 150 to 60-year-old houses, from the Craftsman era in the 30s down to 1840 is what I would prefer. That is not part of the guidelines. It happens to just be a statement of my personal ideas about what would be best for the people who own property in the district and the economic viability. So we've had a number of conversations in the work sessions, and I have voiced these same things, although I've been trying to convince myself that I could justify modernization of the historic district. That's kind of the simplest way I can put it. And I find that I cannot agree with that. So I'm more making a statement. I definitely appreciate the architecture that you have done. I think it is wonderful. Some of this kind of thing, I think, could be used in the Midtown area that's just north of here. But we're dealing with the historic district, and I think we need to toe the line a little closer to remaining historic and not hip-hop.
Yeah, but a building with an 8-foot ceiling inside, it's going to be very hard to make it look like a 1900s warehouse without tearing the building down, which is not what we are trying to do here.
Any other comments? Judy?
This isn't an attractive building. It's a block building, basically, I believe. It never was. It never had any historic character. It's just a block building. And I'm not sure what we can do with a block building like this to make it look historic. It just is what it is. And is the designation on this intrusive?
Yes, I believe it is intrusive, yes.
Quite frankly, when you change the wood on it, I'm much more comfortable with that. Julie, a question to you. You mentioned putting the corrugated metal horizontally.
Yes,
Why was that?
that is the precedent within the historic district.
Just to be clear, for corrugated metals,
Yes, it's in the staff report. And there is a building across the street from City Hall, Roswell Auto Tech. It is a modern era service station which has horizontal corrugated metal. There are also 2 properties outside of the historic district, the McDonald's on Crossville Road and the new school, which did not go through design review, have small accents of the horizontal corrugated metal.
I just wonder in this application, because it is such a squatty little building, that if it were horizontal, it
Yeah,
might add
I
to
personally
that.
think would not work horizontal.
It is the prerogative of the commission to strike that condition, should
Okay.
they choose.
Thank you.
Richard?
Just to add a historical note, they're gone now, but there used to be corrugated metal shops on Mill Street heading down to the old mill, and the sides were vertical. Most of the corrugated metal buildings are done with the sides vertical. In the Mill Village, there are a lot of the homes that used to have corrugated metal that covered the underpinning, and the 52 Sloan Street that was just demolished had horizontal. And in that particular instance, the corrugated was used, but it was the lower area so that it did fit, even though I don't think the people back in the 30s when they did that had any concern with sense of style. They were just trying to make the metal fit. But there are precedents for horizontal, covering the underpinning, but most shed buildings that are built, and just my sense of style, I agree with Judy that the vertical, if you want to build this building, probably should be vertical, and it will help give it some stature.
Richard, do I hear you moving in favor of approving this application?
My vote's completely different from my.
Any other comments? Anybody got a motion? Judy?
I move that we approve HPC 2015-04087, 1099 Alpharetta Highway, storefront renovation. Staff recommendation number 2, requiring horizontal corrugated, use of corrugated metal horizontally, change to vertical as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Chad seconds. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor of the motion, please so indicate by raising your hand. All opposed? We have one vote opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
So, Julie, you're going to bring the second item on the original agenda.
Yes, sir. The second item on the original agenda is actually a grouping of 4 items. It will require 4 separate votes. As you are aware, Miller Lowry is present to present his application for a mixed-use building at the corner of Woodstock and Canton Streets. He applied for demolition of the existing buildings on the properties back in December of 2014. Those certificates of approval are about to expire, and he is requesting an extension of those certificates of approval. So we have 4 application numbers tonight: 2015-04548 for 1180 Canton Street, 2015-04543 for 24 Woodstock Road, 2015-04547 for 34 Woodstock Road, 2015-04545 for 29 Thompson Place. Here's where the structures are located. This is a 2015 satellite aerial. Here are pictures of the buildings as they appear this month. Staff recommends approval.
Commissioners, do you have any questions to the staff? The applicant is here.
Yes, sir.
I suppose you want to talk. Miller, if you give your name and address, please, sir.
Miller Lowry, 3020 Business Park Drive, Norcross, 30071. As Julie said, this is the first component of our application this evening, and these requests were contingent upon a final project being approved, and so therefore, coming up on December here, we thought that this would be an appropriate request to extend this demolition request. I don't know, how long would we, is it like a year, Julie, or?
Yes, they last 12 months.
Okay, so it would last 12 months. We have no intentions of waiting that long, but it's just an extension per se.
Process question, Julie. These certificates were issued contingent on having the project to replace all these properties, that it was granted contingent on the approval of the overall project, correct?
Yes, the only condition that was applied, and I'll read it to you, and this applies to all four, that the structure is not demolished until a certificate of appropriateness has been issued for new construction.
My recollection was we did that because, or I think it was the board's preference that we don't demo the site and it sits there as an empty site. We have erosion control issues, et cetera.
I guess my question is a process question. Wouldn't it, the order of these agenda items, it seems to me, is backwards. If these demos are only going to be granted after the project is approved, shouldn't the project come first?
Well, as a matter of process, he has to have approval for demolition first before he can present his application for construction. There is a possibility that the HPC could not approve the project, or the project may be deferred, at which time his certificates of approval for demolition would expire.
I'm not sure I understood that, but that's okay. Anybody got any questions to the applicant? Hearing none, does somebody have a motion to proffer? Alex?
I understand we have to do these individually. Can they be
Do them as a group.
Can they be combined as a group? I'd like to make a motion for HPC 2014-04548, 2014-04543, 2014-04547, and 2014-04545 be approved for demolition, that the extension be granted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Bill seconds the motion. All in favor of approving this motion, please so indicate by rate.
I've got an amendment. Didn't talk about having to.
Turn your mic on.
Okay, I'd like to present an amendment that to Alex's motion that these demolitions may not proceed until there's approval with the C of A for the replacement structures.
Alex, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of the motion as amended, please so indicate by raising your hand. Have unanimous approval for these demolitions.
Thank you.
You can sit down or you can. Next on the agenda is what the applicant wishes to replace these lots with. That is HPC 2015-04088. It's tagged under 1180 Canton Street, but it does include 24 Woodstock, 34 Woodstock, and 29 Thompson Place. The applicant would like to construct a mixed-use development composed of two buildings. Again, here is the site at the corner of Canton Street and Woodstock Road, bounded on the south by Thompson Place. Here are the extant buildings. Here are the adjacent properties. To the west is 42 Woodstock Road. The residential properties on Thompson Place, 41 and 37 Thompson Place. Nearby properties, which are across the street and do not directly connect to these parcels, are 1197 Canton to the northeast, which is a neighborhood mixed-use zoning. The corner store across the street to the north, which is also neighborhood mixed-use zoning. And the Perry House across Canton Street to the east, which is downtown house zoning and is within the historic district. The other properties are outside of the historic district. This is a current survey of the parcels. Here's a proposed site plan. You can see there are two buildings. Here's the proposed site plan with the adjacent and nearby buildings superimposed. This is the site plan showing the bulk plane and buffer, which is required for the residential properties on Thompson Place. Those are the only protected properties which are adjacent to this property. And this shows the bulk plane. It meets the UDC requirements for the bulk plane and the buffer. These are the proposed setbacks from the on-call architect, but please note that the on-call architect used DH zoning for his report. This is not DH zoning. This is DX zoning. DX zoning permits building up to a 0 setback line. You can see that the DX light purple properties are in the upper left. They are surrounded by DH. This is the upper Canton Street historic context. You can see that Mayor and City Council, when they approved this zoning map, put DX in the upper left, which is very different from the remainder of the street, which is DH. These are illustrated renderings. It's my understanding that the applicant has revised these somewhat. These were submitted to the city today, the revisions, but I did not have time to include them in my PowerPoint or review them, so I am going to use what was submitted on October 16th. This is the corner of Canton Street and Thompson Place. You can see there is a plaza and some step backs there. Canton Street. Woodstock Road. This is Building B. Woodstock Road, Building B to the left, Building A to the right. Woodstock Road, Building A, as one is coming down Woodstock Road, traveling to the west, I believe. The white building is 42 Woodstock. This is the interior road as seen from Thompson Place. Again, Thompson Place. Staff had several recommendations. The biggest one was increasing the step back here at Woodstock Road adjacent to 42 Woodstock and increasing the vertical and horizontal articulation on this building so as to reduce the sense of mass and scale on this elevation. Here are the context elevations. These have been revised. Again, this is the original submittal from October 16th. This is the context elevation with staff notes that are appropriate to DX zoning. The yellow highlighting shows where there are step backs already drawn in varying degrees. Some are deeper and more complex than others. The blue is the staff recommendation for an increased step back. The green is noting the required buffer adjacent to the protected residential properties.
Julie, what is the yellow again?
The yellow is step backs they're difficult to read on these flat drawings, but those are step backs that the applicant has already drawn in. Again, these are the October 16th submissions, and these step backs vary in complexity.
They're the ones that we had talked about in the work session.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Why don't we let her get through her presentation, and I'll come back with your questions.
This is the Woodstock West elevation of Building A, showing the staff recommended step back. This is Exhibit B, which was from the on-call architect. Again, the on-call architect was applying DH zoning to these elevations. The property is actually DX zoned. The landscaping plan will be reviewed by the Design Review Board. However, the applicant did submit a concept plan and they have one in place. It will be heard at the December Design Review Board meeting. Staff did have an issue with some of the parking. We are working with the Roswell Department of Transportation to resolve the measurements on this. It should not affect the design of the building. The applicant submitted a lot of material samples, and I have some. Do one of you want to spread out the brick samples? And they actually brought in a window. So there is a window for you to review, the Pella Architect Series window. Yeah, I guess so, where they can see. Luke, we do have easels. I don't know if they'll fit on the easels. Okay.
Set them down front on the floor.
For the windows, the applicant has chosen an assortment of 6 colors. They suggested 2 Muntin profiles. Staff encouraged the use of the narrower grills. The applicant supplied 5 brick samples, which are being set forth before you, 2 cast stone samples, and 2 grout samples. Although paint color is not a purview of the Historic Preservation Commission, they did submit their paint colors. There's a metal accent, which is a little difficult to read here. It's a Barrage medium bronze Kynar product. They proposed that for the standing seam metal roof, the scuppers, the gutters, the downspouts. They also suggested some lighting. Towards the left is the lighting. To the right is the street lights on Canton, and the applicant has been working with staff to revise the proposed street lights, presumably towards the lights that are on Canton. Staff has 16 recommendations. 14, excuse me.
Julie, given the size of this project, I think it might be best to read these into the record and so that everyone can hear them.
Yes, sir. The staff recommends approval of the mixed-use building with the following conditions. The step back on Building A, adjacent to the property at 42 Woodstock Road, shall be increased by at least 12 feet. Number 2, the vertical and horizontal articulation on the interior courtyard facades of both buildings in the western facade of Building A shall be increased. 3, the balconies on the Woodstock Road and Canton Street facades shall be redesigned so that they extend at least 12 inches from the primary facades. 4, the K56 Cleveland Luminaire streetlights shall utilize the standard black finish and are mounted on poles like the Main Street Lighting Windsor Series poles. 5, the applicant shall come back to the HPC with minor applications for storefront alterations as tenants lease out the units, including entry and service doors and awnings and canopies. 6, the stainless steel cable trellis system shall be removed. 7, the applicant shall locate the utilities and transformers underground. 8, staff recommends that the design of the retaining wall come back to the HPC as a minor application. 9, the Pella Architect Series clad windows shall have narrow 7/8-inch muntins. 10, all downspouts shall have a round profile. 11, the brick water tables shown on the recessed bays of the Woodstock Road and Canton Street elevations shall be reduced. 12, all parapets shall be taller than any roof-mounted mechanical equipment so that it is properly screened. 13, the angled surface parking along Thompson Place shall be redesigned to dimensions required by the City of Roswell Transportation Department. And 14, the Roswell Department of Transportation comments shall be addressed as part of the land disturbance permit process. Several of these conditions have changed since the staff report was written. Number 4, the street lights. And number 6, in a work session, the stainless steel cable trellis system was addressed by the commission, and the commissioners felt that it was appropriate in place. Any questions?
Richard.
On recommendation number 2, this is that's just on the interior
That
of the
is
courtyard?
It is for the interior courtyard facades as well as this facade, which is an exterior facade. It faces 42 Woodstock and is rather visible as one drives along Woodstock Road.
But the interior articulation is not very visible from any street.
It will not
is
be
it?
visible from any street. That is correct.
Why are we concerned with that? What was the point?
That is the prerogative of the commissioners. You may strike that portion if you wish.
I'd just like some advice because I don't see that it's a big problem. Doing step backs, the applicant would lose, a good bit with these other step backs to make the building more friendly to neighbors. So,
Well, to be clear, there was no request for step backs on the interior courtyard, simply additional architectural articulation to break up the massing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments, questions? Alex?
I would like to thank the applicant for the many hours he has spent with this board to go through this design. and appreciate the response you've given. You guys have response and the design that you guys have listened to us. I think we've come a long way from what the first elevations and concepts and sketches, and just want to really thank you guys for reaching out to us and listening to us and putting up with us, and thank you again.
Applicant has anything to say?
Have a presentation.
We have a jump drive to put into the computer. Is that okay? A lot of, and the images are the revisions that we sent in today, taking into consideration the primary corner, specifically coming up Woodstock. We want to be very clear that we know exactly what's changed from what we just looked at and what was submitted this morning, and we can point those out, very minor. And Rob Rule, Rule Joy Trammell Rubio, our architect, is going to run through the slides and do a light presentation, and obviously stop us with any questions, and we'll answer them as best as we can.
May I add that the drawings that were submitted today are on your desk?
We dropped a hard copy package off, 11 by 17s. Everybody should have a copy up there.
It's all yours.
All right.
That's a glitter, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I could just do that then. Okay. All right, good. Is it right and left right there?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing's happening.
Oh, is that a PDF?
I think you will need to do that.
It's there, I think. You want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, we can start here and move around. So first, I just want to say that on the staff recommendations that we just went through, for the most part, we actually accommodated all of those.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you get
Yes.
started, will you give your name and address,
Yes.
please?
I'm sorry. My name is Rob Rule with Rule Joy Trammell and Rubio Architects in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you.
So, as I was saying, we have addressed the staff recommendations in large measure, and we can go through those points if needed. We can also address the images, and we can walk around the building with the images that you see on the screens in front of you if you like to point out some of those things that we modified based on meeting with you last time, and some of the recommendations that you had talked about we have addressed. And so we can just kind of go around the building, and if there's any questions, please ask if you have any. But this is obviously the view on Thompson looking back out towards Canton from the neighborhood. So you can see in the foreground, going off to the left, you can see the through drive with the parking that would have nice landscaping and all the street lighting and sidewalks there to make it very walkable, very pedestrian friendly. This obviously is set, this facade is set far away. I think it's 75 feet away from the nearest neighbor, something like that.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so it's set back 3-story height. You can see that obviously the project is broken down into 2 buildings, but within that context, we've broken down each building into what appear to be several buildings that were could have been built over time. So as we move a little bit closer to Canton, you're looking down the drive. You can see the second building off to the left there. We've modified the roof lines. You can see that we've added the gable end that you can see on the narrow end of one of the buildings there. And you can see some of the modified articulation. Some of what you see there came directly out of our conversations with you and with staff. And then moving out to the corner of Canton, we have you've seen most of the moves that were done here, and this is where we really did a lot to break down the scale of the building as it meets the intersection of Thompson and Canton, going from 3 stories down to 2 stories down to 1 story, and then actually having an open plaza at the corner, giving that to public space with a seating wall with some landscaping associated with that. There would be we represent that there will be tables and chairs and, other things out there. This could be set up for all sorts of activities and events, at different times. And then you can see the one-story kind of a covered area where it says Vickers there, moving into to the right where the retail storefronts would be underneath 2 stories of residential above. So you can see along Canton, you can see the massing off to the left is the corner we just spoke of, where you have much varied heights between 1, 2, and 3 stories. We've deliberately located balconies for upper residences within this area. There's depth that's created with that, and setbacks that are created with that, and shadow lines and varied roof lines, which we think are important at that corner. And then you start to see what appears to be the first building, which would have retail at the ground level. This doesn't show it, but obviously at that ground level there would be things that the retailers would add, such as canopies, signage, graphics. You would see the interior presence of the buildings, which would really enhance the streetscape there at that location. And then above that, there would be 2 stories of the residences, and then you can see a physical break between that first section and the next section, using balconies as a strategy to break the roof lines, to break the depth of the buildings, to break the massing, and also change color and texture of the materials. So you can see 2 different brick colors happening there. And then as we continue to come around the corner from Canton onto Woodstock, you can see the building that's on the corner, or what is perceived as being a separate building on the corner, once again has different materials than the buildings adjacent to it. It is only a 2-story building there. We have at the corner, we have stepped the top floor back, and actually we went so far as to change the materials and the color at the top floor. It actually creates a wonderful terrace for the 3rd floor resident that chooses to live there in that wonderful unit at that top level. And then moving to the right of that, you see we've broken down the facade as it moves down Woodstock. It's a 3-story facade, but you can see the roof line is broken down because of the great amount of ins and outs that we've created there. We've also added some articulation throughout this on all the retail storefronts, as we've talked about, with some of the way that retail can be articulated, using different materials around framing the windows, having some pilasters and other elements, particularly you can see in this lighter color building you see there, but changing the window patterns and the mullion patterns, we listened to you and did that. Moving further down Woodstock, as the street slopes downward, we end the first building that you see on the left there. We chose, there is a little bit of a firehouse aesthetic with this, with the color and the brick and the detailing. You can see the wood doors that we have there that look like they would almost be a firehouse, fire engine door. It really does screen what the necessary need for service on the site. You've seen some of that. We've detailed a little bit more. And then as you cross the street, the smaller building, you can see that we've simplified that facade somewhat. We listened to some of your comments about the roof lines and some of the elements that we've done to simplify that. We've moved a balcony around the corner. And then you can see there's a stoop entry there where we actually have an entry into this building. The stoop comes out to the street with a canopy and lighting and all the things that you would expect to see at the sidewalk level. And then we did listen about the corner that you see on the far right-hand side here, about the need to step that down more. So you can see we've got a significant step down there that was not there before when in the drawings you had seen just previously. So we've stepped that not only down towards the neighborhood, but back deep off the street, so you can sort of see what that looks like right there. This is another view of that same corner from further down Canton, and you can see these are accurate representations from photographic overlays of the scale of the street trees, the trees in the adjacent neighbor, and simplified masses of the adjacent two structures. So you can sort of see it all in context. And that is, an accurate graphic representation. That was the last slide, right? Yes. Yeah. So are there any questions from the group that I could answer?
Commissioners? I don't think they have anything.
Okay. All right.
Bill?
I'm going to look at this from a little bit different angle. one of the things I look at is the viability of streetscape in Roswell and how vibrant it can be and how cool Canton Street is and why we came here in the first place. And I think you've done a great job in a lot of aspects, especially the corner. But one of the weak spots to me is on Woodstock as well as Canton in terms of carrying that character of moving the architecture in and out so you have spaces where people can actually gather and socialize and things like that rather than just a storefront look. And to me, Canton Street's so critical. If you just look at how it is now, I mean, those are things that we all want. We don't want to see diminished. So I think there's some, well, I think it's a beautiful project, and that's not the point here. The setbacks and things they'll deal with in a little bit. But the issue of the viability of the streetscape is so critical to these areas right now. To me, that could use some work on that, so those two sides. Not the corner. The corner's great, but it's very mundane coming down through there. And to me, these streets need a little bit more.
Alex?
Can you rotate to the next slide so we can see what he's talking about? We're seeing it at an angle right now, but I think he's talking about the elevation going along Canton Street. Is that correct, Bill? Yes. And I think there is some opportunity to play with the storefront there, but maybe stepping the entrances back, or this elevation right here, I believe is what he's talking about.
I'd like to point out that
Not a very long one.
the intent of the presentation this evening is for the architectural details, and we have worked very extensively on a landscaping plan, taking these items into considerations. That will be in another separate public hearing with the DRB, and this is not really an accurate representation of what the landscaping is going to look like. In addition, the depth of the curve to the buildings, primarily around the building, are over twice as deep as what you would see on the south end of Canton Street. 10-foot clearance without any disturbed walkway for people going both ways. In addition to that, there's additional room for tables and chairs and whatnot in front of these commercial spaces, and that gives us the flexibility as we take this project to market and lease these spaces. We don't know exactly who the tenants are going to be on the commercial storefront, but the landscaping and the facade details and modifications essentially will be parlayed into our final minor approvals with the HPC, and those are, I think, in alignment with what we've discussed in some of our closed meetings.
Just to clarify, it's not about the landscaping. The streetscape program's fine, your connectivity's fine, all that's great. What we want to do is to do it a little better than Canton. We know what works there. We know what's good. Yes, would we move it back if we could? Absolutely. But for right now, the issue to me was the ins and out of the spaces, the creating the activity, the social nodes that are so critical on these streets. The streets should be vibrant. It's not just storefronts. So that's, if that makes any sense. So.
Anyone else? Alex?
Can I just get a clarification? Did I miss a meeting when the DRB took over the landscaping for the HPC?
That was part of our mayor and council requirements on that legislation, that the DRB would have final jurisdiction over the landscape plan. Is that right?
That is correct.
And the reasoning being?
When the applicant requested conditional use and a variance from council, the resolution included a stipulation that the design review board would review the landscaping.
Alex? As I understand it, the council person who made that comment and motion thought that the HPC did not have landscape purview. That's what's in the minutes.
I do not know what was
It's in error. I just wanted to make a point that the HPC does have, within the historic district, purview over landscape. However, that council motion trumps the guidelines at this point. So DRB has, as I read it, purview
Yes.
over the landscape. It's done.
And Richard, our intent is to continue to work with the board in any manner we can to make this as a positive impact, a pedestrian-friendly urban development as possible. So to share these landscape plans with you as we move forward and do our minor reviews with some of the elevation details is, I mean, we're, as you well know, willing to work and show these and review and make sure that those two, the landscape and the facades, work in tandem.
Any other comments to or questions for the applicant? Judy?
Oh, not for the applicant. I wanted to ask Bill something.
Please, go ahead.
I don't believe you were able to sit with us at our last two work sessions when we made, and by the way, thank you very much. You did take a lot of our comments into consideration, and I think that's really important. But what you're saying, I would like you to give us some example of what you're talking about, because when we were sitting brainstorming what we could do with this.
I mean, the packet we got is a great example. There's a lot of historic towns that you follow Alabama. I mean, look at the street down through there, where you have the ability to have social action out in front of that street. You're doing a great job of it on the corner. But that should be replicated in and out. And so what I'm talking about is the ability to move the architecture in and out, where you do have not just two tables set up out there, but you may have some sort of social note. It may be a restaurant or whatever it may be, but it's activity. And I'd rather see you do that than move the thing back 75 feet. I mean, it's not a yard. So the ability to keep it's a fine line, and I understand that, but the ability to keep the streetscape active and vibrant rather than just flat storefronts, to me, is very important. It's not everywhere, but it's an in and out movement.
So you're talking about more articulation on the storefront level?
Yeah, on the ground floor level, not the backside, not any of that, but just the ground floor level.
And Bill, I do want to point out that the building at the corner of Woodstock and Canton, the red, it's shown in this illustration, is a red brick with some white caps on it. We've brought that building off of that corner closer to 25 feet. Our hardscapes landscape architects were actually designing a permanent stone bench structure out there, and so there is extra depth there as you come around that corner, make a right-hand turn, it gets the building off of the street. And in addition to that, all of our commercial storefronts, as you can see here, there are, in some instances, 10 to 12 foot wide step backs, so your door into the commercial interior is pulled back. I don't want to quote the wrong footage here, but about 4 feet. So it's not, you don't see a flat facade all the way across the ground level.
It's not so much about your architecture moving a little bit here or there. It's about the social connections, the ability to do things out there, the ability not just to have a bench, not to have somebody sitting there, but the ability to have activity. And it's not everywhere, but you've got it on the corner. If there was on the terminuses, on the ends, somewhere to have activity in different areas would be very helpful. That's
Okay.
One other question.
Alex, and then I'll come to you, Judy.
Bill, I think that's a great comment. One thing I will speak of on the architecture of this is that's a very, very short area right there along Canton Street. So the fact that he's got two bookends of green space, I think will spill out into the architectural part of it, into the walkway, so you do have that activity. But in reality, that's really a short distance from corner to Thomas Street.
Judy?
Could we go back to that last slide where the building, what material is that white building?
This is a wood panel on the first floor with some, I believe, a 5-inch lap siding and a board and batten treatment above it. We were instructed, or a suggestion by you guys was to maybe incorporate some wood into the building. We agreed with that statement, and so we wanted to put something out there. Luke and I and Rob were talking about this a little earlier. We feel like the board and batten may be a little busy, maybe the bars are too close together, the vertical bars, but also in the drawing, sometimes it doesn't come out in a drawing as it would on site. So you see kind of a dark line where in reality you may not see that. We still want to study that a bit further, but the intent is to have some wood, not an entire brick building around, although that we are breaking up the different buildings. So that's and we would look at using composite materials, low maintenance. The windows we've specified are all aluminum clad, operable windows, very nice. We're leaning towards a pellet Proline window, very nice window, and our intent is to really build a world-class development right here.
Richard?
I have concerns about the white element also. To my eye, this development is to mimic a growing over time commercial development. There was very little wood, at least used in Roswell, maybe in Deadwood, Colorado, but not here. If it needs to be wood for some reason, then I definitely think clapboard, horizontal clapboard, with a pretty good size weather.
And Richard, that's a great point. That's something that we're committed to working with you guys on as we move through this process on a minor exception, to really get into the details as a tenant comes along and look at each individual building and continue to work and massage it to make sure that it has a cohesive element throughout the entire project.
That also brings me to the other thing on the staff recommendations that I was concerned with, and I had a mental block. But in number 5, it says the applicant shall come back to the HPC with minor applications for storefront alterations as tenants lease out the units, including entry and service doors and awnings and canopies. And I'm interested in this HPC, not staff, making those decisions, because at the present code, staff has purview over all minor applications, and it doesn't even include opportunity for the HPC to be involved in those decisions. So at the time of the motion, I would like to entertain that be changed to major applications that can be handled in workshop.
Richard, I don't understand. Can you say a little bit more? Are you objecting to the way that minors are handled, or just the stipulation that changes to these concepts would be handled as minor applications?
I don't care if they're handled as minor applications. I do care that the HPC has no say in any changes that are made, under that stipulation. So I would like the word minor, changed to major.
If you have it as a major application, it's got to come back to a full public meeting.
That's true.
Exactly like in this environment. As a matter of practice, I understand, and frankly, as you know, I agree with your concerns about minor applications. But as a matter of practice, we've handled those as a collaborative effort between staff and members of this board, and its members. And there's always at least 2 members of the board.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't know of any exceptions that we've ever had to that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
As a matter of procedure, staff has been distributing minor applications to the commission.
And your assurance, of course, is that if this is approved, that they would be handled similarly as this project, if it's approved, as it moves forward, correct?
Yes, and if the commission wishes to do so, they may modify that recommendation to include such language.
Then I would definitely like to have it stipulated that at least a certain number of HPC members are involved.
Let's see where this goes.
Okay.
I'm confused because it says the applicant shall come back to the HPC. That doesn't say anything about
With a
staff.
minor.
It says the HPC.
Right after that, it says with a minor application.
Okay. So anytime that I think we've had a discussion that any changes to the storefront would come back before us.
It should, but if it is a minor application, the UDC code stipulates that staff makes the decision, and that's what I want to prevent, from happening with the HPC in the dark.
Just change the word applications to changes.
While that, Richard is correct, while that is in the code, the practice has been otherwise. It's been a collaborative effort. And certainly, you can, again, if this moves forward, we can stipulate that in whatever a motion is proffered.
That'll make me happy.
That'd be a good thing. Anybody else? I'm going to ask if anybody from the audience has anything to say, but before I do that, Bob Halsey, who's the Assistant City Attorney, is here. I want to ask if he has anything he would like to say that is any way relevant to the question at hand here.
Thank you, Tony. Many emails have been addressed to staff and to Brad Townsend and others about saying that this should not be approved, and I just wanted to iterate that that's not the purview of the Historical Preservation Commission. Its charge is to decide whether a design is appropriate or not for the historic district based upon its precedent and based upon the UDC and the design guidelines. The design guidelines are to be applied within the zoning district for which the design is applied. I have seen a lot of email confusing the zoning for this particular project, which is DX, with Downtown House, which goes further down Canton Street and is across the way, the Perry House. And I think that the purview, my concern as city attorney is what I can defend in court if whatever decision HPC makes. And in looking at our design guidelines and the way they're put together and the UDC, they are bound by, one, the language of the UDC, two, the guidelines, which I emphasize are guidelines. They are not part of the actual ordinance. Rather, they are to be used by designers of projects and by the HPC to fashion conditions, and particularly by the HPC to fashion conditions that, in the HPC's opinion, will make the project that is allowed in the zoning more compatible with the surrounding areas of the historic district. Much of the comment has been that this is incompatible with Downtown House, and I think everyone would agree it's not Downtown House. But again, it's a different zoning. It's mixed use. In researching this, I was curious about how long the height of 3 stories had been allowed in this particular one, because there were assertions sent to us by email that council had recently changed this. In fact, my research shows that the height of 40 feet, which is what 3 stories normally translates to, has been in effect on this site since at least 1971. In 2003, when council enacted the zoning code immediately previous to the UDC, this was 3 stories and 40 feet, this particular corner. So when the UDC was adopted, council did not change the height requirement for this corner. In fact, the zoning of DX is here and across the way where Corner Grocery and Ray's is right now. I can't speak to the reason that council did that. This came before council in June on a conditional use requirement for multifamily. Council denied the application to have 4 stories. They granted the application to have multifamily in this location, and they said that HPC should exercise its purview. So I just caution everyone that we have to keep the discussion within that. I'm aware that the UDC, if you look at the design guidelines on page 82, says applying UDC zoning standards in the historic district, It is important to note that UDC height, building coverage, or setback standards may sometimes be inappropriate for specific historic contexts, i.e. code may allow 3-story height, but historic context is only 1-story buildings at the street edge. In these cases, the HPC may sometimes require reduced height or building coverage and modified setbacks to maintain compatibility with historic context. I would suggest to you that the HPC has strived to apply that principle in this case, and they have consulted the city attorney's office as they've gone along in this process. Staff has asked, and that is what they have strived to do. Reasonable people can disagree whether this has been accomplished or not, and that is the purpose of a public hearing. So with that, I just wanted to have that out there. Keep in mind, this zoning is DX, not downtown house. They're two different ones.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Halsey? With that, I want to open this up to anybody that has anything to say with regard to this project. We've got quite a number of people here tonight. I'm going to ask that you hold whatever comments that you have to 5 minutes, and with that, any of you that wish to come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and any comments. Blow me away. Yes, sir.
Can't have no comments. My name is John Caruth. I live at 46 Goulding Place, about 4 blocks from this development. I want to thank you guys. You guys have gone back to the drawing board and done a great job. I only have a couple of little minor comments I want to make. That white facade needs to go away. We don't have control. You guys do have no control over what they paint that white facade. It could be red, it could be pink, it could be green, and being wood siding, it's more likely going to be painted every 5 or 6 years. I would strongly encourage you to make the applicant make that brick. He's going to be less likely to change the color and texture and look of that facade. The second point I have is a very, very minor one. On the Thompson Place, can I put this up here? On the Thompson Place side, where the leasing driveway loops under the building, you've got a corner that has no visual support underneath it. All you have to do is move the pillar over about 2 or 3 feet, and you'll have something that looks proper. This is a much better facade than what they used to have. They used to have some really strange architecture on Thompson Place with cantilevers and so forth. I think that fixing that right there will go a long way to making that facade look better. But overall, I think it's a pretty good project. Not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than what we used to have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
Lou Oliver, 843 Peachtree Street, Atlanta. I was against this project at first. When I saw it, I was just thinking this is just the end of the world. And I've been opposed to many parts of the UDC, and I think a lot of people think that I'm entirely against the UDC. I think the UDC needs a nice editing. But I think the core of the UDC is solid, and if this town is to make any progress at all, its essence needs to be supported, because it promotes pedestrianism in this part of Roswell, which is critical, which is not even feasible in Greater Roswell. Greater Roswell has problems which are huge in its sprawl repair. But this part of Roswell has a great deal of hope. I think this project will be very positive to pedestrianism. I think the scale is great. for the historic district. If anybody's been to Americus or any other little town in Georgia, they're going to see 4, 5, 6, 7-story buildings. And by the way, they have no setback. They have no steps, which is really a contemporary notion because most people are scared of scale. Scale frightens them. I guess they've never been to Paris. But I would encourage the board to avoid further breakdowns in scale and to think about unifying the building and to really hone this project to a very fine-tuned outcome. So I wholeheartedly support it and thank Miller and his team for persevering.
Anyone else? Going. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Anybody care to make a motion? Alex?
All right. I may need some help with the staff recommendations. I would like to make a motion for HPC application 2015-04088 that we approve the application as submitted to include the staff recommendations 1 through 14. Do I need to list those? We've already read them through.
You can stipulate that. I think it's fine.
And to remove item number 6 of 1 through 14, that the commission has approved the use of the stainless steel cable system in that parking area. And that there's a clarification on item number 5 such that when the applicant comes back before the HPC with minor applications, that it is part of the HPC board as part of those decisions.
Alex, should any part of your, and this is a question, not a suggestion, is any part of your motion need to include any of the comments that you have heard?
I have no problem with including any of the comments that I heard from John. I think I saw the architect shaking his head, so I'm sure that's some minor details that we can work out.
Judy?
Could I just add to that any changes that are done in what we approved tonight come back to the HPC for approval, whether it's minor or major application?
So, as a matter of process, you're proffering a friendly amendment to Alex's
If
motion.
he will have it.
I will accept that. And then one additional thing I would like to add is, I know we see all the finishes before us, but I would like to have when it goes into construction, all that we do have a sample panel built, very similar to what we did on the previous large project that was here in Roswell, with all of the materials for review and approval.
Julie, now, that's a lot. Can you make sense of that as a motion?
Yes, sir, I can. I would like to ask a clarification.
Please.
Is the commission voting on the drawings that were presented and submitted on October 16th and assessed by staff, or the drawings that were submitted tonight and have not yet been assessed by staff?
We have a motion from Mr. Paulson, and he can clarify his motion in that regard.
I would like to include, and hopefully the commissions will agree with me, the drawings that were submitted tonight, because they did include and incorporate the comments that we've had at our last couple of sessions.
Can I make one comment on the plan submitted this evening? After a quick review, contradict item number 1 based off of the staff recommendation to have a 12-foot setback along the entire perimeter of that eastern side, I believe, of Building B. Building A.
Alex,
And we essentially, the change there was, we incorporated a 3-story setback in the corner on the drawing submitted. If we approve the drawing submitted today, my concern is that that's going to contradict item number 1. So if we could remove item number 1, I think that clarifies, that could clarify the motion.
Alex, this is your motion.
I recommend that we eliminate item number 1 as well.
Just replace it with a condition of.
With the condition of the new drawing.
Plans that were submitted
That was
tonight.
submitted tonight.
Correct. Unless you want to also modify the white on those plans.
Wouldn't that go in front of a minor anyway?
Brad, I would think that would be a minor.
Okay.
As part of what we're doing with the storefront.
Okay.
They have some concerns as well.
Okay, as a matter of the record, I'm tempted, in fact, I'm going to ask you, Alex, if you make this motion, see if you can make this make cohesive sense. That's a big task. But I know you're willing to try.
Okay. So you want me to revise the motion?
I want you to, if you would, pose your motion again, just
Okay.
for the record.
All right. I'd like to make a motion for application 2015-04088 that we approve the drawings that were submitted this evening and reviewed, to include the staff recommendations 1 through 4, with the exception of number 1, which will include the elevations submitted today, which would delete item number 6, and would, number 5 would have a different reading, and that the applicant should come back before the HPC with any application, any minor applications, as well as the staff. And that we include the comments made in the audience tonight with respect to the elevations.
I have a clarification. Did you mean staff conditions 1 through 14?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not saying 1 through 14.
Judy?
Can we add again, if there are any changes to what was submitted to us tonight, that it would come back?
No, I didn't. And that any changes that are submitted after tonight be brought back before us for review and approval.
As minor applications.
As minor applications. And I guess I need to add the sample panel board again to that as well.
One additional comment on item number 7. In the mayor and council conditions, that was part of it, but the way we worded it was, I believe, to the best of our ability. What I'm getting at is the transformers, yes, we're moving them. They wouldn't work with the elevation submitted, but the overhead power lines, based off of our meetings with Georgia Power, we are putting underground, but the transformers are going to be moved. We're not sure if we can put those underground or not. They will be moved, but I just don't want to, I mean, this language specifically says transformer underground, and Georgia Power essentially has the say on this. Personally, I think that the mayor and council covered that in their approval.
I have the mayor and council resolution here, item number 10. The 2 existing transformers shall be coordinated with Georgia Power and relocated in the best suitable option in a manner to be screened as minimally visible to the general public. There is an additional condition, number 7. All existing overhead utilities and new utilities shall be placed underground at the owner's expense, if allowed and found feasible by the utility partner. The Planning and Zoning Director may exclude Georgia Power electrical lines if the applicant attempts such underground placement, and in the opinion of the Planning and Zoning Director, that such placement is not feasible either physically or economically.
Alex, would you object to that being woven into your motion?
Yes, I would, and basically to replace number 7 with the resolution number 2015-06-36, item number 7 and item number 10.
Okay, we have a motion, I think, finally. Do we have a second? Chad seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion, please so indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
I want to thank you all for working so hard with us for a year, going back time and time again, just when you thought you had it right this past week when I requested you come back again. Thank you so much for what you did.
We do have one more item. It is a discussion item. Mr. Michael Fisher is here to present a revision to the city lighting.
Mr. Michael Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, I was requested at the last meeting to take a look at the festive lighting that we have over top of the walkway that goes from our parking area over to Canton Street. I've presented a plan. I want to see which one. Can you pull that up? Julie, is it on there? All right, so the plan that you're seeing right now, I want to go ahead and tell you is not exactly what was brought up in the meeting when we met earlier. It was actually described as trying to put all of the poles together side by side and then do a crisscross pattern across that walkway. And I did that, and I had that for you for your consideration if you want to approve that. However, when it came across on paper, when we actually put the plan out, it looked like we were selling more Christmas trees than what we currently are now. Let me show you how that came up. That's the crisscross pattern. And down at the bottom of the screen, as you can see, because of the amount of turns and curves that we have in that sidewalk, it actually looks more random than what we have out there right now, in my opinion. So I went ahead and have this for you, and I'll leave that for a minute. I know Alex may want to take a look, or Commissioner Paulson may want to take a look at this one also. The crisscross pattern really makes it even less of a pattern than what is currently has. At the part out near Canton Street, they're very close together and very tight. Then they spread out because of the way the sidewalk curves so much. So with that in mind, I did it again, putting the posts together to give us a little more of a pattern, but you almost have a Z type where you go across and over and then down and across and over. And that kind of takes the curves of the sidewalk out. So it kind of lets that pattern run with much more symmetry as it goes through. So I know it wasn't exactly what you mentioned. I have both of them here, and you approve whichever one best suits you, but I wanted to provide this option. I think it's a lot clearer than the crisscross across the middle of the trail that we had looked at.
Brad?
Did you need him?
I think you wanted to shut the door.
Richard?
Yeah, the crisscross one that you have is very confusing, and I don't.
It gets pretty thick.
My whole point was to take what you have drawn now, and instead of a Z, you have X's across there. You just add a whole nother string, that gives you an X between the long distance pair of poles.
Okay.
It's just an extra set of lights,
Yeah, I agree with Rich on that. That way you're not seeing the zigzag.
Exactly, because I think it would, and down.
So leave the spacing of the poles kind of like this one is, but cross them more in the middle as we go across.
Do X's instead of a single line.
Right.
Which makes an X instead of a Z between each set of poles. And down here at the termination near the parking lot,
Yes.
that's, there could be another one, you could have another pair across that and eliminate the farthest end pole, use the second pole and put one across from it and put another X in there. And I think that would simplify it and make it look unified.
Okay. All right, I understand that.
Is everybody okay with that? Man, we're setting all kinds of records for the speed of decisioning tonight.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make that note on this before I forget, so I can.
So is everybody okay with those comments? All right, I think you got what you want.
So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and get this drawn up in that other way and just have it to you all.
I think
rather
you can
than-
send it to as a matter of information. I don't see you needing you're coming back to present it.
That would be wonderful. Not that I mind coming, but that would be great.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, we have board introduced topics. I'm going to assume that there are, who wants to introduce that topic tonight? Hearing none, moves us to the minutes. Judy, you got any comments?
Actually, not many. She did a great job, but I do have one question, and probably a problem of not stating who's talking when. On page 18 of 27, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down, it said, Judy Muir welcomed the applicant to the neighborhood, first of all, and talked about introducing themselves to Bill Greenwood, and I know I didn't say that, but I'm almost certain Judy Rayford did. So you might have said Judy, and they didn't realize there was another Judy out there, and she hadn't identified herself.
That undoubtedly is what happened.
Right.
And on page 8, the George Vale's address is not Kings Mill, Courtney, Langford. It's Kings Mill Court. Have a spelling problem.
Anything else? With that amendment, Richard, you want to move for the approval?
I would like to move that we approve the minutes for the October 14th, 2015 meeting with those two edits.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Judy seconds the motion. All in favor of approval of the minutes, please so indicate by raising your hand. Minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you all. This has been, I have to say that totally unexpected for me.
Are we still on the record?
No.
I believe we are still on the record.
We're adjourned.
Well, I mean, I really don't care whether it's on the record or not, but I